What's up, everyone? So yesterday I was playing around with Amazon Interactive Video Service, which allowed me to kind of get up and running with a live streaming platform in about 2 minutes. So I thought, what if I wanted to build something like Twitch? So in this stream, I'm going to be taking Amazon Interactive Video Service, coupling it with Amplify to create something like a Twitch-like experience where we have a live stream. We have the ability to sign in and sign out. We have the ability to leave comments on a stream. And then we also have the ability to kind of see who's creating the comments so we can kind of know who is in the chat. So I hope you learned a lot from this, and we're going to try to knock this out in about 45 or 50 minutes. So enjoy. All right, so to start things off, we're going to go ahead and go to the Aws Management Console. And what we're going to do is just search for Amazon IVS. And that's going to be Interactive Video Service. So here we have Amazon Interactive Video Service. We'll just click on that. And this is where we're going to create our channel, which is going to be kind of where our live stream is configured. So I'll give this channel a name. I'll give it something like Live Stream App. And we'll then have the option to choose a default configuration or the custom configuration. So the default is going to have full HD with low latency. The custom configuration allows you to kind of mix HD with low latency with standard definition and standard latency. But we'll just choose the default and we'll click Create Channel. Now doing this, we'll go ahead and it will give us the streaming setup that we need. So we can go now and see that we have our ingest server URL or URI, our streaming key, and our playback URL is what we will use to kind of play this back into the app. And then we also have a way to kind of view the live stream once it's started. And all we need to do is just take this ingest server and the stream key and put it into OBS to kind of make sure that this is all working correctly. So here I have OBS opened up, and I'm going to go into the settings. Here we can choose under the stream section the service that we'd like, or we can choose a custom setup. So under custom, I'm going to paste in this server URI in the stream key. And I'll go ahead and click OK and click Start Streaming. And that's really all we need to do for the actual service standpoint for the stream itself. We're going to wait a couple of seconds and then we're going to test it out to kind of make sure this is all working properly. I think I'm going to give it like a delay of like 5 seconds or so, and then I'll refresh. And then we're going to see if it is here. It's not yet, so let's wait a couple more seconds. Oh, there it goes. It just became live. So now we have our live stream working, and we see that we have like a health check, a duration, and the number of viewers. So that's all we need on the service side for the actual stream. What we're going to do now is go into our terminal, and we're going to start building out the front end for this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and for now click Stop Streaming, and I'll go to the terminal here, and we'll start creating a web app. So I'm going to be creating a React application, and from there we're going to go ahead and test out just that the stream is working in our app, and then we're going to add some features around it, like the ability to add chat and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is say npx create React app, and I'll call this my streaming app or something like that. And I guess while this is running, I'll go ahead and open another window and change into that directory. And here we can go ahead and maybe run Amplify init. And this is going to kind of just initialize our Amplify project. So we're going to go ahead and be able to set up the project name, the environment name, our text editor, VS Code, the type of project that we're in. We're going to choose React as the framework that we're using. A source directory, which is src for us, distribution directory, build command, start command. Then we're going to be able to choose our AWS profile. And I'll choose default, which is US East 1 for me. So this is going to go ahead and deploy the Amplify backend kind of initial setup. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and install the NPM modules or dependencies that we're going to need. So what I want to install is AWS Amplify. we're going to install at aws-amplify/UI React. We're also going to install React Router DOM. And we're going to install a like a video player, and I think it's like React Player. Yeah, I think that's it. So yarn, okay, we already have yarn. So we're going to say React Player. So we have Amplify UI React, we have React Router DOM, and React Player. I think that's all we're going to need. If we need anything else, we can always go back and add that as well. Okay, so while that's installing, I guess we can go ahead and Amplify add our features. So we're going to need authentication, and we're going to need a GraphQL API. So the authentication is just going to allow people to sign up and sign in and stuff, and then the API will, of course, allow us to do stuff like create comments. So we chose the default configuration for the auth, so I'm going to go ahead and run Amplify add API, and this is going to be a little more custom. We're going to choose GraphQL. We're going to choose an API name, which is fine as a default. We're going to now need a default authorization type, and we're going to then add another one because we want to provide public and private access. So I think I'm going to do public access as default, which is API key. And then I will do advanced settings so I can add a new auth type, which is Amazon Cognito User Pool, which is what we did when we ran Amplify add auth. It's essentially a managed authentication service, something like Auth0 or Okta if you've used those before. We do not need conflict detection. We don't have a schema yet, so I'm going to choose no there, but I do want a guided schema creation just to kind of start off with the boilerplate, so I'll choose yes to those questions. And then now we should have our schema open up in our text editor, so I'll go ahead and put this on the screen. And we will start writing the data model for our comments. This is going to be pretty simple. We just need a comment type with an ID, a message, and maybe an owner field. The owner is just going to be who created the comment. The message is going to be the actual comment. And then we'll need to add some authorization rules, because what we want to say is we only want the owner to be able to modify any of the comments that they've created. So for instance, if I create a comment, I can update or delete it. We might also say allow public, and then allow them only the operations of read. This way, if I am not signed in, I can still read the comments if I'm just a visitor. And then we might add one more that is for private, which means if I'm signed in but I did not create the comment, I can still read it. So this kind of gives both public and private access. And I think that's all we need. So I'm going to go ahead and close VS Code, go back here and press continue. And I'm going to run Amplify push. And while that's deploying, I'll go ahead and open up the project back in our text editor. And I need to double check my package.json to make sure I added React Router DOM. Okay, good. I didn't know if I had added React Router or React Router DOM. So that's what we need. So what we're going to do now is first, I guess, let's test out if the stream is working first. That'd be pretty cool. So I'm going to open IVS and copy the playback URL. I'm going to then restart the stream. And I'm going to go to app.js. And I'll go ahead and just create a variable for the stream URL. And I might import the player from React Player. Let's go to the GitHub project, see how that works. And we will render the React video player here. And then here we're going to set stuff like the URL is equal to the URL that we define there, or stream URL. The width will be set to 100%. And then we'll also set maybe the height to 100%. And we might do some styling. And since I'm going to be essentially just doing CSS and JS. So I'm not, and I'm also going to be doing inline styles because I don't want to add a bunch of new dependencies. I'm going to make this as quick as possible. I will say something like width 900, and then we're going to test this out. So what we would like is for our stream to be playing. And I guess, you know what? I think we need to add a flag for like autoplay. And I think to do that, we can just set playing to like true or something like that. We can just set that playing flag. It looks like I imported something there. Try that again. Oh, there we go. Our stream is working. And, you know, that's a good first start, I guess. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and stop the stream. And we're going to go back and write some more code. So the thing that we want to do is we want to have a way for people to sign in. So what I might do is create a new component called Auth component. And here we're going to do a few things. What we want to do is create some type of mechanism for them to sign up and sign out. So we're going to be basically using the Amplify UI component for that. So let me go ahead and create a main function. And I guess what I want to do next is import the UI component library, which is the with authenticator from at AWS Amplify UI React. And we also might want to import the sign out button. And then we'll just pass that sign out button here. And then for the default export, we'll just wrap the auth component. And then we're kind of good to go. But we also might want to be able to like show a name like of the signed in user, username or something like that. So let's go ahead and say user update user is equal to use state. We'll just set this to null. And then in the use effect hook, we will go ahead and say, I guess we're going to need to import the auth class from AWS Amplify. And then here we can say something like auth.current authenticated user. And we can say update user, passing in the user. And we might need to change this to current user because we already have declared user right there. And then we can say .catch. We'll log out the error. And then what we can do with this user is we can say something pretty basic. We can say if there is a user, we can just say hello user.username. Okay, so that's all we need for that auth component. So what we're gonna do now here is we need to actually have a router so we can actually show the main app and the auth part where people can sign in. So let's create a function called router. And then we can now change the default export to router. And the router is going to basically return, a div, and then here's going to be our routing stuff. And what we're going to import for now is the hash router, link, switch, and I'm trying to think what else we might need. I think that might be all we need for now from React router DOM. So we're going to have like a hash router. We're also going to have maybe like a nav with a couple of links. Oh, I think we also need the route component. That's what we need. Okay, so I think that's all we need from React Router DOM. And we're going to have like maybe a switch. And what I'm going to do is go to React Router docs. Make sure I have this all right. And okay, switch route. Okay, that looks good. Path is equal to the root, and I guess this needs to wrap a component. So what we're going to have here is the app component, and we're also going to have the auth component. And I can go ahead and import that now. Okay, so we have routing set up for a couple of links. So we will say 2 is equal to that. And I guess this isn't a self-closing tag. We'll say home, or maybe we can say stream. And then for this one, this will go to auth. We can say profile or something like that. Okay, so we have our routing set up. Let's save this and see what kind of errors we run into. Or if this actually works on the first time. You never know. Looks like I have something misspelled in app.js. Go ahead and copy that and fix that. So it looks like I'm using the link outside of the router, so maybe I can just do that. Whoops. Okay, looks like our navigation is working. We don't really have anything going on in our stream right now because we've turned off the stream, but maybe we should add some height here, or at least like a min height. We don't really have anything going on there now, so that's fine. We can go back and fix that, but for now let's go ahead and see if our auth is working. Ooh, it looks like we are missing a configuration for Amplify. So we just need to go into index.js and configure Amplify. So we import Amplify, we import the configuration from the AWS exports, and we call amplify.configure. This is kind of what you need to do at the root of every app just to make sure it's all set up. So we'll try that one more time. Okay, so I should receive an email with a multi-factor authentication code. And I did, and we'll try this out. And there we go, I'm signed in. I see that I'm greeted with my username, and if I refresh, I stay signed in. Okay, so we have this working. The next thing we want to do is maybe let me get rid of this app header, and I might add some border just to kind of give us an idea of where our stream is going to be sitting. And I don't think I need this min height after all. Okay, there we go. So what we want to do is we have, our stream here once we turn that back on, and we're going to have, a section for comments. So we might want to put that to the right of this stream. So to do that, let's go ahead and create a div wrapper. And I guess we don't need this header anymore because this is actually no longer the header. So within this div wrapper, we're going to have maybe this being our first component, and then the second component is going to be our chat feature. And we probably want to apply some display flex here, or some type of way to lay this out horizontally. So I'll go ahead and say style is equal display flex, and by default this should be flex direction column. And then here I'm going to do some basic styling just so we can kind of see this component. So for the width, I'll probably give this a width of like 300, and then I'll also give it some border, and then I might add a height of 500. So there we have our stream on the left, our chat on the right. And let me remove this height actually and see if it'll still show up. Okay, cool. The height is no longer there, so that's better. Okay, so what we need to do now is add a way for people to create comments if they're signed in. If they're not signed in, they cannot create a comment. So how do we do that? The way that we're going to do that is we are going to go back and use some state along with the auth class. So similarly to what we did in the auth component, we're going to go ahead and import auth class. And we are going to say something like, as the app loads, we want to check and see if they're signed in. So we'll say like use effect. And we're going to have some use state. And in use effect, we'll just say auth.current authenticated user. Actually, I'll turn this into a promise since we're in use effect. All right, so we have that set up. So what we can do now is we can basically check to see if this user is there. And if they are, we will have a form for them to create a comment. And what we can do here is just pass like an input and a button, create comment. The input is going to have a placeholder of create, or actually it's going to be maybe comment, and a value of maybe, we're going to need some type of state for this actually, so we're going to have to figure that out in just a moment. So we have a way for this to kind of show up, but for now let's delete this and just see if it works. What we want to do is just refresh and see if this indeed is going to show that the user is there. And I called use effect, but I haven't imported it. So we'll just do that react.use effect. So we now see that the comment is there. And if I sign out, I go back and I don't see it there. So that's exactly kind of what we want, because if you're not signed in, you can't create a comment. So I'll sign back in, go back there, and we're able to create a comment. So that's we're getting there. The next thing we want to do is create some more state, but what we're going to do is actually use use reducer. And the reason we're going to do that is because we need a way to keep up with comments, but we also need a way to subscribe to new comments. And when you create a new subscription in a React component or a React functional component, you're essentially going to be creating like a closure. And then if you use state, you're going to be getting stale state. You're not going to be able to keep up with the state properly unless you kind of move that outside of the component into its own reducer. So that's why we're going to be using use reducer. So what I need to do to make this work is have like a function called reducer. And in this reducer, you get like a state and an action. Actually, let's make sure that that's the right order. It's either state action or action state. So it's going to actually be state action. So that's right. Function use reducer. So what we're going to basically do now is switch on the action.type. And then we're going to do like a case of something. And a case something else. And then we're going to have like a default. And then default is going to just return the state. So a couple of the actions that we're probably going to have are like set comments and then add comment. And for set comments, this all depends on what the state object looks like. And all we really need to do, I think, for this app is just keep some type of list of comments. So I might have like an initial state, and it will be, it could just be an array. But, to make this a little more declarative, we might say comments, and then we'll have this as the array. So knowing that the state is going to have this structure, state.comments, we need to keep that in mind. And what we might do here is we're going to return the state when we set comments, and we're going to then say comments action.comments. That way, if this state changes ever, we still have, we're returning whatever state gets added, and we're not kind of like just overriding the entire state object. For add comment, we might do something like, we're going to return the state. We're also going to return the comments. And we might append the new comment like here, action.comment. So for set comments, we're going to be setting a new array. For add comment, we're going to return the existing array and just add a new item there. And then for the default, we're just going to return the state. Now to use this reducer, we're going to go ahead and say const state, I guess dispatch, I think it is react.use reducer, and we're going to pass in the reducer and the initial state. And to make that sure that's actually right, I'm going to go here. So reducer, initial state. If you look at the use reducer docs, you'll see kind of how all this stuff works if you've never used it. So we're passing in the reducer, we're passing in the initial state. So what we can now do is refer to the state.comments. And we can say, okay, if we have comments, we're going to say state.comments.map comment. And then here we can actually return each comment. So we might say something like comment.message. And then we might have like a span that says from comment.owner. Of course, when we save this, like this isn't gonna like do anything yet because we don't have any comments, but this is gonna be now set up for when we do start adding comments. So we need to do a couple things. First of all, we need to have a way to add a comment. So let's have a function that's called async function create comment. And what we're going to need to do here is call the GraphQL API. To do so, we're going to need the API class. So I'm going to scroll way back up here, and I'm going to go to Amplify, and I'm going to import API. We're also going to need the GraphQL operations for the rest of this. So when we created our GraphQL API using the CLI, we got this GraphQL folder with mutations, queries, and subscriptions. So I'm going to go ahead and import the ones that we're going to need. So we're going to need to import create comment. I'm going to go ahead and rename this as create comment with an uppercase from GraphQL. Actually, it needs to be from -GraphQL/queries. And we're going to also need to, actually this is mutations. Okay, so we're going to need create comment. We're going to need list comments. From GraphQL/queries. And then we're going to want to subscribe to new comments as they're created. So we're going to say on creates comments as on create comment from GraphQL/subscriptions. And if we go to like subscriptions, and we're going to now look for this on create comment, you'll see that it's already been created. If we go to queries and we look for list comments, you'll see that it's already been created. We're just importing these that were created for us by the CLI. And the one we're going to need first is create comment. So let's now scroll down and see how this is going to work. Well, the first thing we might think about is how are we going to capture that user input? What we need to do is have an onChange handler and create a function to capture that. And what we're going to need to do is set that in some type of state. So right now we don't have any state for that. So let's go ahead and create that now. We'll call this input set input, and we'll set this to react.useState, and we'll set this to an empty string. So now when the user types, all we need to do is capture that event, and we can then say set input e.target.value. Oh, this needs to be actually the onChange handler. Okay, cool. So like as they're typing, this function is going to be persisting that to the state. And then in create comment, we can now just use this input value. And I might change that to input value to be a little better about the naming. And then for the value, we can actually just set that there so we can actually reset the form whenever we create a comment. So the first thing we might do is we might say if there is no input value, we want to return. So that means if there's an empty string still, then we don't want to continue and send an empty value to our backend. The next thing we might want to do is create a variable. So we might say comment data, or just something like message, I don't know, is equal to the input value, and then that way we can clear the form and have like an optimistic response, but still hold on to that message. And this is the message value that we're going to be sending to the API. So what we can do now is say await API.GraphQL, and then here we're going to pass in the query of create comment. The message is going to be the message that we created there. And then we're actually going to need to set an auth mode, because we have multiple authorization modes for this API. By default, it's set to API key, meaning any request is just going to by default assume API key. But if we want to actually set something else, we have to specify it. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to set the auth mode. And you can actually see where this is documented. If you go to the Amplify docs, we go to the libraries and API.GraphQL. We're going to go look at the configuring authorization modes, and we have the 4 different ones here. So I can just copy this Amazon Cognito user pools, and that's what we're going to use, because we're assuming like they are signed in, right? Because we're not even showing them this form if they're not signed in. And then what we might do at this point also is, since we're working with this state for the messages, we might also dispatch to our reducer and add comment, because this way we get that optimistic response. But you know what? We probably want to do that before the API call, because we're just going to assume, like again with an optimistic response, that this is actually going to go through. So the type is going to be set to add comment, and the comment is going to be an object with the message. But we also need to set the owner. But the problem with, well, actually, this isn't really a problem, because we are kind of in this reducer. We can probably just set that here. So let's try to go ahead and set the owner as the user.username and see if that works. So we're dispatching add comment to add the optimistic response. We're also resetting the input value. And then the last thing we need to do is attach this function to the button. So I'll go down here and I'll say on click, create comment. So let's see if this works. So I'll say hello world, and I'll also maybe open the console to see if there is an error, what that error is going to be. I hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. All right, looks like something happened and then something didn't work. So it looks like we're getting that key prop issue, so that's fine. We can handle that later. I'm also getting some type of issue with the API class. So let's see what's going on there. Okay, I think I see the problem. I'm using the lowercase create comment when it should have been the uppercase. So let's try that one more time. Okay, looks like we're getting some issues, but the UI is updating. So the variable input has coerced value of null. Okay, so yeah, I think the problem is this. We need to have an input that has the message, because if we actually look at the GraphQL mutation, we're going to see that this takes an input, and the input has the properties that we need to pass in, as opposed to just kind of passing them in directly. So we'll try that one last time. And then this time, the only error we should be getting is the key property issue. Oh, no, we're still getting some type of issue. Oh, okay. Again, I'm actually using this API wrong. It needs to have a variables property. And then here is where we're going to do that. Okay, cool. So that actually worked. The only thing that we're getting is the key property. And maybe for now, because we are, prototyping, I'll use the index for the key. And in production, you would do something more like using a unique identifier or something like that. The next thing we might want to do is, so let's check to see if that item has been indeed created in our database. So I'm going to say Amplify console, and we're going to look at our database. Because essentially the thing that just happened is, what we're hoping is that we just created a new entry into our database. So we can go to API, and we can go to the comment table here, and see under items that we have a comment. So that's great. That means our comments are working. We can now fetch these comments and render them in our app as we refresh. So what we're going to do now is, in useEffect, we're going to create a function called fetch comments. Or we're going to reference effect or invoke a function that we haven't created yet called fetch comments. And we're going to say async function fetch comments. And then here we're going to say const comments data is equal to await api.graphql. And then here all we have to pass in is the query of list comments. And then now we can dispatch set type of set comments. And the comments are going to be the comment data .data.list comments.items, because the data coming back from the GraphQL API is set into this comments data variable. The actual data structure has a data object on it, and in that data we have the ability to either render the this should be items. We have the ability to either render the items or the next token. So we could say list comments.items or list comments.next token for pagination, right? So for right now, we're just going to take like the default, which is just going to be the array. And then now when we refresh, we should see that our list of comments just comes through and gets rendered right away. And if we add a new comment, we see that that gets added, and then if we refresh, we should see that both comments are there. So that's great. The last thing we might want to do is, let's go ahead and add a way to subscribe to new comments being created by other people. So what we want to do is we want to have a function called subscribe. And in this function, we're going to call a subscription to handle real-time subscriptions of new comments. So we'll say function subscribe. And here we're going to say API.GraphQL again. The query is actually going to be the on create comment operation, which is the subscription. And then what we can now do is say .subscribe. And then we're going to have a next function that fires whenever this happens. And this is just going to have, for us, we'll just call this comment data or something like that. And I'll need this to be async because we're going to make a call to our auth class to get the current user information. So to test this out, all we have to do is just, for now, just console.log comment data. And we're going to now go back to our app and open this in a new window. And I'm going to open up the developer tools, and I will just make a new comment called something like real-time comment. And here we see the comment data coming through, and then the value has the information that we need, which is going to basically be the message and the owner. So the real-time is working for now. What we want to do though is handle that. So all we need to do is call that dispatch of add comment. But we need to be able to identify the owner of the operation before we do that, because the reason that I'm saying that is, like, what if we create the comment? Do we want to actually add that to our list? But we probably don't, because then we would have duplicates of that comment because we already created that optimistic response. So when we create a comment, we automatically assume that it's going to work. We plop it into our array. But let's say then that subscription fires a second later. We want to discard that if we were the one that created that comment. But if we were not, then we want to keep it. So what we might do is say const, we might have like a try catch block here. And what we might do is say try const user is equal to auth awaits auth.current authenticated user. And I might say if user.username is equal to, and I need to now say comment data dot value dot data, and let me kind of destructure that const. Comment data. I'm getting the value and the data. Okay, that's fine. Now I can say if user.username is equal to data.onCreateComments.owner, then return. And if not, we will dispatch create comment. Or actually, I'm sorry, add comment. And we want to also say the comment is equal to the data.onCreateComment. And then also, if this errors, meaning that the user, there is no user, then we also want to dispatch, because that means there is no user, meaning that they couldn't have created the comment. So we're basically, catching a couple of different scenarios here. If they are signed in but they aren't the user, then we dispatch. If they're not signed in, we dispatch. So let's refresh this to see if I added any errors there. And I'll also go ahead and turn my live stream back on. Okay, so this is our moment of truth. What we want to happen, actually, let me go ahead and delete a couple of our comments too. What we want to happen is when we create a comment, we want it to kind of come through in real time on the other screen, but not on our screen. So now we should only have one comment. And I'm going to go ahead and, it looks like our stream is there. So this is going to be a real time test. Create comment. Okay, so the comment came through here, but it did not come through here. So that means we're kind of having some type of issue. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream for now. And let's see what we have going on here. So I guess what we can do here is, let me consider what's going on. If user.username is equal to so I'm going to go ahead and console.log the error here. I'm going to console.log the user here. Oh, I know the problem. I'm an idiot. It looks like I'm actually signed in there. Let me open an incognito window. That's the problem. This actually probably is working. Okay, real time take 2. Boom, it's working. The only thing we want to do now is turn back our stream and try this thing out and in production ready status like we have now. And delete a couple of these things. I will wait a few seconds for the live stream to catch up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll refresh. Let's see if our live stream is there. It is. So now I'll say hello in real time. And we should update on the right-hand side, but not on the left-hand side. And that's it. Everything is working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this code and I'm going to open source it in a GitHub gist for you to check out if you're interested in that. And I really appreciate your time for watching this. I had a lot of fun building this. This is just the start, of course. You would probably want to add your own styling to it. So if you end up taking this and you want to kind of do some cool stuff with it, tweet out to me. I'm Dabbit3 on Twitter, D-A-B-I-T and the number 3. And thank you so much for watching. So follow me on YouTube if you're not already and spread the word if you like my channel. Appreciate it.